will be the video Bible study. My name is Matthew Bray Nemeth, and I'm a former pastor, now a college instructor, professor, working on my doctoral program at the University of the Cumberlands. And the goal of this recording or series of recordings is just to work through some of the books of the Bible. We're going to start in the book of Hebrews, and this provides a means for me to work through some of my study, but also to capture some of it. Maybe one day some of my grandkids could watch this, but really the goal is that this would be useful to the Lord. To start with a short word of prayer. Lord, commit this entire effort to you. If this is yours and you want to use this, I ask that you would do that and be with us as we walk through your words, and let it impact our hearts. Amen. So first of all, the New Testament book, the letter to the Hebrews, is thought to be written by Paul, but there is some disagreement on that among some scholars. But it does appear to be Paul's voice, and the one thing that it has that really stands out is if it is written by Paul, it's one of the few places where if Paul is writing, it's interesting that he doesn't identify himself. In his other teachings, he's pretty clear about being the teacher, being the author. So this short introduction, we're going to talk about the structure of the book of Hebrews. Now, for sure, numbers that are added in, like chapters and verses, it was all added much later than when this book was written. So some of the structure appears to fit the chapters, but some of it does not. You'll notice in my Bible here, and this is the New American Standard. This particular edition is the Cambridge Pitt Minion, really nice, handy size to use. And what you'll see here, and the reason I'm using this particular copy, is you'll see the blue highlighting and the orange highlighting, all this underlining. And this signifies some sections of division of logical thought that I'd like to point out in the book of Hebrews. And this will be how we get our start, is kind of a quick overview before we dig into the verses themselves. So first we've got this chapter 1 for the most part, starting with verse 4, working all our way through the end of chapter 1. And this is the first doctrinal section. And we're going to see this doctrine followed by warning. So I've got at the bottom of my Bible here, I've marked that doctrine 1, Jesus is God, eternal above all. And then warning 1, drifting away. So the peril of drifting away. And that first warning section starts in chapter 2. And all of the book of Hebrews is structured this way, where we've got doctrine presented, and then we've got warnings presented. So that second section, which is the first warning section, is only through the first few verses of chapter 2. Then we go right back into a doctrine section, the second doctrine section, which is really about Jesus dying for us all. The second warning section starts at the beginning of chapter 3, and that is the peril of unbelief. So I've labeled each of these warning sections down here at the bottom with some sort of peril. So as we work through this entire book, you can see the third doctrine then is Jesus the high priest. The third warning is the peril of falling away. Many Christians don't believe that it's possible to fall away. It seems like so much time wouldn't be spent in the Bible addressing the perils, the dangers of falling away from Christ if it was, in fact, impossible to fall away. let's go into Doctrine 4 then, is New Covenant. And Doctrine 4 starts at about chapter 7. So we've got a rather large section here in the second warning section, the peril of unbelief. It's about 2 chapters long. And some of these sections are like that. Some of these are rather long sections. So that 4th doctrine section is the New Covenant that fills the Old Covenant or fulfills. And then the 4th warning is the peril of continuing in sin, not repenting. And chapter 10 of the book of Hebrews has some really powerful, strongly worded statements in it that are hard to read, that don't tend to be people's life verses or the things that they feel encouraged by when they read. So let's go into the 5th section. The doctrine section is about salvation being by faith. And then the 5th warning section is the peril of leaving the church, which is also the peril of losing heart. And then about how God disciplines those he loves and sanctifies them. So we've really got a total of 10 sections that take us through the entire book of Hebrews. The book of Hebrews has 13 sections, and the closing of the book of Hebrews is one of the places where there's good evidence for Paul being the author. The closest that he gets to being personal is in the end. He talks about, bear with this word, for I've written to you briefly. Take notice that our brother Timothy has been released. And Timothy was one of Paul's contemporaries. But otherwise, he doesn't identify himself as Paul in this book. So, but that benediction, or that last section of greeting in the end, that's where it starts to really sound like Paul's voice. It starts to kind of mirror the way that he tends to sign off his letters. So if we, I tend to believe that Paul wrote Hebrews. I think he was one who was qualified to write the book of Hebrews. I love the book of Hebrews. I think it's a book that it's kind of the theology book of the Bible. If I've heard people refer to James as that, which is right here, located almost in the same place here, is that James is the theology book of God, of the Bible. I think James is a very abbreviated, very short. In this one here, this copy, it's not even 3.5 pages long. But in the book of Hebrews, we get into a lot of the meat of the faith, a lot of the deep thinking. So that's kind of a brief introduction to the book of Hebrews. We're going to work through each section and cover what is that section talking about, what is it saying to us, and what was the implication for the people at the time, and what's the implication for us. So I hope you enjoy this study with me.